Interviewing is one of the least trained corporate skills. Everyone's been in a bad interview loop.
He thought he had to act in a certain way because that's how he saw other people acting in interviews for the company. So how people pick up their interviewing practices, whether they were a candidate and someone treated them like that, or whether they saw their boss interviewing like that, you can convert a great, nice person into being an intimidating a-hole for no reason.
I didn't realize that was like a no-fly zone, right? And there was absolutely no malicious intent whatsoever. A 55-year-old is 3 times less likely to get contacted for an interview than someone younger. And there is kind of a war on Gen Z. You don't want to hire the 55 plus, and then you don't want the young people. So I'm sorry, what is this teeny tiny window you're trying to hire to? I interviewed during the holidays, and I was asked what my plans were for the holidays. And if I was, quote, playing Santa anywhere, they revealed that the person that was leaving was because they were having a baby. And so they wanted to avoid hiring another parent.
It's a scary thing for companies, I think, to look behind the curtain of their interviewing. You have to ask only job-related questions. If it's not related to the job, best case, it's a waste of time. Worst case, it's an illegal question.
What happens when you let hiring managers run wild without any sort of training and begin interviewing candidates? Did you know that this is actually a pretty stupid and even dangerous oversight for your company to make? Do you have any idea what it could be costing your organization when it comes to dollars, reputation, and sanity? And while a ton of attention is given to candidates, showing them how they can prepare for their interviews, on the flip side, for employers, there are very few that actually think through this process and provide training to their hiring managers. If you're not sure if this applies to your company, if you have any sort of retention problem, that can probably be traced back to your hiring process, which again brings you back to interviewing. Now there's a solution out there that can help companies everywhere, and it is called Expert Interviewers. It's a firm that's co-founded by 2 ex-corporate colleagues who became best friends, Lorna Erickson and Victoria Gates. And their company provides training on how to interview candidates. They've grown tremendously in large part due to their social media presence, which includes a ton of hilarious, relatable videos on what happens during the interview process that we all groan about, right? You're going to hear from them on the insane cost of not focusing on how to interview candidates at your company and how easy it is for your employees to accidentally make illegal remarks during small talk. I'm telling you, you've probably done this too. They're also going to reveal their game-changing secret, which really should be standard practice at every company. And those who actually go ahead and embark on it, they're going to have crazy results. If you're excited about the prospect of learning how to make the interview process suck less for both your employees and your candidates, stay tuned. You're going to learn so much in this episode. I have Lorna Erickson and Victoria Gates. Both are fabulous human beings and so much fun. I've had the pleasure of meeting them in person now, and it was just immediate kinship. I was like, these are my people. And so thanks for coming on the show. Well, I had seen you guys on social media and just loved your stuff out of the gates because you call it out like it really is, right? Like people go through interview processes that are just like outrageously terrible. I've been a part of them as both a candidate, and I've also probably been the interviewer who didn't do the greatest of jobs out there. And you see it, this mediocrity across like so many organizations where it's just like a bad experience and nobody really knows what they're doing. And so I love that like the whole genesis of your business is to shed light on like how to actually do better interviews as a company and make the candidate experience better. So like if you can share with us maybe some of the worst possible stories that you've heard or experienced yourself, either as a candidate or as an interviewer, I would love to hear that.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one that comes to mind for me that I don't even know if Victoria and I have talked about this one recently, so it's going to be a surprise to her too. I was partnering with this hiring manager, and he was, I mean, truly the kindest human being ever. He was so sweet. All of the people that worked for him loved him and raved about him. And the people that worked like alongside him, all of his peers, like he's genuinely the nicest person ever. And I'm like, sweet, I can't wait to work with this hiring manager. And then I asked to shadow one of his interviews, and I didn't recognize the person that was in that room. He was the exact opposite. He was an intimidator. Not joking, took off his shoe, put it on the table and said, "Do you like my shoe?" And the guy's like, "It's not really like my style." He's like, "Well, you don't have to like it, but I need you to sell it to me." And I was like, what is happening? And then fast forward to the end of the interview, he's like, "Do you have any questions for me?" And the candidate said, "Yes." like, what are some of the things that the people love working? Like, why do people like working for this company the most? He's like, why do you think? And I'm like, what is going on here? So after the interview, I mean, I told him, I'm like, this is going to be the start of a new partnership for us, because I'm going to lead with honesty, and I'm going to tell you that I don't recognize the person that was in that room. And it just goes to show, though, how somebody is programmed to interview you. Like, he thought he had to act in a certain way because that's how he saw other people acting in interviews for the company. So how people pick up their interviewing practices, whether they were a candidate and someone treated them like that, or whether they saw their boss interviewing like that, you can convert a great, nice person into being an intimidating a-hole for no reason.
Gosh, yeah, like the power aspect, just like getting that little glimpse of power.
Yes.
And, wow, just that immediate transformation.
Yeah, but it just took one conversation. He was very coachable, but holy smokes, was that a shock. So yeah, there's mine.
Wow. I mean, that is unbelievable. I guess this was his like creative take on sell me this pen, like angel sales thing, right?
It was.
Like, what? Sell me this horrifyingly ugly shoe? Like, oh my God. That just, wow.
Yeah.
Wait,
I like that you assumed that it was just a horrifying, ugly shoe just based on the description. You're like,
yes.
You're not even giving him a cute shoe. It wasn't, it wasn't cute.
He doesn't deserve one in this story. No.
No, he doesn't get it. Sorry.
Wowza. Okay. Yeah. That's something else. I'm glad he was coachable, though. So that speaks to your abilities as expert interviewers.
Oh, thanks.
Okay, there you go. That's the proof point you need. If you can change that guy, imagine what's possible at every organization, right?
Exactly. Yep. Exactly.
Wow. Okay.
Yes. Okay.
That's wild.
You got one, Victoria? Is that what you're reading?
I'm gonna read you one. We had put up a post recently, and it's just a couple sentences. We put up a post recently that was like, tell us your worst stories, and not like, they did this or that, but what makes you question, humanity, right? Like, what are the ones? So there was a lot of one, sneaky type illegal interview questions, which we've been highlighting, but I found this one to be interesting. So this follower said, I interviewed during the holidays and I was asked what my plans were for the holidays. And if I was, quote, playing Santa anywhere, based on looks and all of that, they repeatedly asked me questions around Christmas holiday plans, basically determining if I was a parent. Because they revealed that the person that was leaving was because they were having a baby. And so they wanted to avoid hiring another parent, which is horrific. So that's a pretty bad one. And that was from 2 weeks ago. So a lot of times, a lot of the stories we hear are way back. And what I will say is people think, oh, it's changed. Oh, it's gotten better. It really hasn't. It really hasn't. In pockets, there are certainly people that, do well and do it right. But oh boy, there's more of those out there than we realize for sure.
Oh my gosh. And I was even thinking of it from the perspective of like these things are interminable. It's like a 9-month process, 75 interviews, panels, etc. And you have to jump through a million hoops. And quite often you just like don't even get an answer at the end. You're ghosted or you get some form letter.
Yeah.
But it's not just that that's bad.
Right.
It's all of this stuff.
Yes,
happening
it could be
in 2025.
Yeah, lack of inefficiency, right? I mean, they're inefficient in their interviewing processes are more common than anything, but there's still these little outlier stories that happen daily.
All right, so the current situation of work is not looking so great based on the grim findings you just shared and, what I've heard from countless listeners, right? What will the future of work looks like once expert interviewers is in the mix in plenty of companies all over the place?
Yeah. So we know that when you go online for interviewer or interviewing resources, it's always candidate focused, right? So candidates have a plethora of information that they can look through, and that burden of preparation is typically put on them. And instead, what we do is we focus just on the hiring managers. We don't offer candidates any kind of advice. They have plenty of it, and there's wonderfully qualified people out there to help them with that. But instead, we only work with hiring managers. And what we do is we help them to customize processes and interview guides and questions that are specifically for their job and their company. So once they're able to become more intentional, they're able to give a better experience for candidates, but also they're able to hire more accurately and equitably and help their company grow, of course, when you hire the right person the first time.
Yeah, that does help, I'm told. I recall, like, at the past organizations of which I've been a part, even when I was a hiring manager, much less just like a person on a set of, in an interview loop, if you will, like as one of the people that they stop along with along the way, no one gave me any roadmap whatsoever.
Right.
And I was going on gut.
Yes.
And, I knew well enough, common sense being what I would hope would be common, but clearly is not. I went in prepared enough, having at least looked at their resume, But I can't tell you, I've gone in as a candidate multiple times over the course of my career, and they've been like, oh, so I'm looking at your resume. Sorry, I just got it or whatever. Like literally had not looked. And I'm like, cool, why am I here? I like took time off work to be here and like made childcare arrangements. So this is great, going great, So it's outrageous, but like, yeah, no, they just give you the keys to the castle in these corporate environments and they're like, go forward. And they have no idea what you're going to do. So tell us a little bit about the story of deciding to go on social media and how you guys show up there and what really drove you to use that as one of the main growth engines for your business.
Yeah.
I mean, Victoria.
I can
go
hit
for
it.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Lorna and I, little history lesson. We worked together for many years. We've known each other for, oh boy, it's been 13, 14 years.
That's what I was going to guess too.
Yeah. So we shared an office and she mentored me with creating hiring manager training back then. And, it was something that I ended up also facilitating the training alongside her and then on my own and then after her. And, it was shortly after the pandemic because we were in the thick of it as moms during the pandemic. And it was shortly after that. And I was like, we talked about maybe taking this training and helping other people. And we didn't exactly know how to do that. And I just was like, I think maybe we could just start posting some content online. I think maybe other people would like to see this and it would just be some free advertising and maybe we should try it. And, please God, nobody go back and watch any of our first videos because they're definitely not at the level. But we started posting just about 3 years ago and we really, just put ourselves out there. And anytime I talk to people on the side about it, it's like, don't question it. Just get yourself out there, start doing it because you will learn very quickly what feels good, what doesn't, what people resonate with, what doesn't, what value you're bringing. And so we started posting on 2 platforms, TikTok and Instagram. And, really, to your point, our Lorna's genius and creativity with roasting the people that are doing the things while also making them still like us is the secret sauce, we have a few times said to ourselves, should we be going this hard at that interviewer? Like, are we roasting the clients we hope to have? And then we said, no. These bad, terrible interviewers, the ones that are the worst of the worst, they're not going to be using us for training. Those are not the ones we're going after. We're going after the ones who want to improve, the ones who are new to it. We want to help those people that are craving it because interviewing is one of the least trained corporate skills. We saw it firsthand for close to 15 years, both of us working in recruiting and TA. And it's very obvious. So that's the story of how it came to be. And it has grown and we are tremendously grateful for that because it's just been really cool and a really crazy part of our business where all of a sudden we set out to be a training company, but now we're also a media company and a training company. So it's been really fun.
So talk to us about that because it has unfurled these different revenue streams that you weren't necessarily planning would be there.
Yeah. Trial by fire. I was like, brand deal? What's that? Like it was once we started to get a following, and then we had companies. I remember one of the first companies we worked with was an AI note-taking company and we had seen their stuff online and I just cold outreached, right? So I just started reaching out to some brands via DMs and, stalking people on LinkedIn. I just put on my best sales hat, which is not my vibe, by the way. And I didn't know, the first couple we did, we got taken to the cleaners on one deal. Deal, they totally took our stuff and used it on all these other things because I didn't know about some of the contract language. So, we've learned a lot. It's been really cool. Exactly. It's been really cool and fun and really, ended up probably close to 2/3 of our revenue has come from it in 2024. So it's been really awesome. And it's been fun. Some of the brands we work with are some of our favorites. So we have a really good time.
Totally.
So cool.
And props to Victoria for being the mastermind of our social media world, because when she first told us that we were going to be posting to social media, she's like, Instagram and TikTok. And I was like, who is TikTok? I've never been there before. How is this going to work? So it goes to show that you just have to start. That's where it was for me, because I had no idea what was happening. And then just like following the fun, you know, it's like, what is fun for you to talk about? And then that energy just naturally comes out, and people resonate with it. If they see that you're enjoying it and it makes sense, then they're going to want more of it. So
I love that. And especially in this new world where it seems like everybody's going to have to go it alone, like more or less at some point in their career. Talking about ageism, right? A lot of people aging out of corporate, having a hard time re-entering the workforce. And so people are going to have to kind of by default become consultants or have some sort of quote, and I hate this term, side hustle, but like this is the gigification, the sort of Uberization of the white collar workforce is already here, right? And I think that's only going to continue with the advent of generative AI and, you know, continued outsourcing for cost savings and reductions and the focus on short-term profit. So you're getting sort of a firsthand view into what it's like creating a business that has these various spokes of different revenue streams. And, you know, so Lorna, you once were doing this as a side hustle, and Victoria, you now continue to do it as a side hustle and have your corporate job alongside that. So share a little bit with the audience who may be curious about going it alone and doing something like this. Like, what has that been like for you guys moving out of corporate and having something else like this you built brick by brick by yourself?
Yeah. You know, it is interesting. It's interesting when I think about my time in a corporate environment for so long. I think I was in corporate environment for like close to 17 years, I think. I did learn a lot of lessons, some of them which I didn't want to learn, but other lessons I know that were probably pretty valuable to me. But what I will say is that there were certain aspects of the business or the way that things were situated that I just knew didn't vibe with me. And it took a while for me to listen to how that felt with me. And then after some time, I could feel that certain parts of the job, like they didn't feel right to me. You know, it's like whether you call it the Sunday scaries or, you know, whatever else, like there's certain aspects of the business that weren't aligned. And then there were certain parts of the business that were so much fun. And for me, that was always working and training with the hiring managers. So throughout my corporate career, I noticed for a while that I was waiting for the company to make a decision for me. So every once in a while, I go on a maternity leave. I'm like, hey, guess what? I'm taking an extended maternity leave. You going to fire me? No? I'm like, you going to fire me?
I dare you. I dare you.
And then I'm like, I'm going to have a second baby. I'm going to go on an extended maternity leave. You going to fire me now? No? Okay. And I was like, I'm going to come back part-time. You going to fire me? And they're like, nope. And I'm like, well, okay. So then finally, it finally had to be my decision, and I'm glad that I waited for it to be. But at that point, I realized, no, this is exactly what we're going to need to do. By that time, Victoria had already helped us to grow our social media following. We knew it was going to resonate. And so that was a little bit of confidence that I needed. And I waited for the right time. And when I transitioned out, it's been just a little bit over a year now. It has allowed us to like be more focused on our business, the areas that we're most excited about. And it's been a great transition. Scary, but awesome at the same time.
Oh, I'm sure. And you know, it's nice that you had the opportunity to do it while you still had a full-time income. Like, you know, a lot of people were like, I'm going to go quit my job. And I'm like, no, if you can hold on to that, I would. Nope. Don't you dare. Don't you dare. You start where you are and you make incremental progress, baby steps, right? And I'm glad you were able to do that, because I think there's a lot of glorification of entrepreneurship and solopreneurship out there, and it's like, dude, this is freaking hard. Like, this is not easy. You don't just turn on a spigot and like money comes out. That's just not how it goes.
Right.
And you kind of have to go through the process too, because you don't want to fail on the major stage. You don't want to fail in the big leagues. You want to like fail in the minors, right? Like you're going to learn. Like you said, you don't want to go back and look at your early content. Neither do I. It's terrible. But at least we started, and you have to start somewhere. I love that you did it that way.
Yeah.
And how amazing that the business mastermind of Victoria got you to a point where you could be like, I am out of corporate. I'm doing this. I'm following what I love.
Yes, 100%. Yeah.
That's awesome.
And
you guys are a power duo.
Her creativity and the videos and the content itself, though, is truly the engine behind it. I just had to give her the nudge and light the fire.
Get out
and there. You know, and that's what happened. So we're truly, it's like we joked prior to us recording that, you know, there's two of us, and that is something that I have never been more grateful for when we talk about entrepreneurship. And It
Yeah.
is so unique and so cool. And we have a built-in sort of team, and we each can kind of really thrive in the areas where our skills align to. And it just flows really well. And it's just been really cool. So entrepreneurship has a ton of challenges, and going off on your own is super scary. But I would also say, like, look around you too, because you don't always have to go it alone. Like in this instance, like Lorna and I had a similar passion and interest, and we were able to just team up. And we've been friends for that long. We have now been in business for, at this point, probably four, almost 5 years in business, but really going at it really hard the last 3 years. And it's just been really awesome to see. So that would just be one other note that I would say. It's like, I think a lot of times people are, maybe thinking of it on their own. And I also think it's really can be a cool, and there's always horror stories about partnerships and bad things. And
most
I think
of them involving friendship.
I know, exactly. Yeah.
Here's the counterpoint. That's
Well,
amazing.
Oh, and
Those good
and what
stories.
was and we have a close partner / lawyer of ours. He's like, to maintain a great partnership, he's like, you're going to have a rock solid contract on the front end. And I'm like, yeah,
Yep.
that makes sense. And at the time, Victoria and I, like, why would we ever need this?
It's
but
like a prenup, right?
Yes,
We're in love.
exactly.
We're in love.
Yeah, stop it, Rich. We're in
This
love.
is real.
But, yes.
Together
it's just-
forever.
Yeah,
You
but
gotta
it's so
be smart.
important.
It
Yeah.
absolutely is. Things change, circumstances change, and you need to be
Yeah.
protected. And I love that you guys have had this beautiful friendship that continues into your relationship as business partners, and that it's working out so well. So I absolutely
Super
love
lucky.
that. And if you can find someone who has the alternate skills, different strengths to yours, that's amazing. It's like, it's just like the power of a team, right? People with different skills. Like, I need you on my team. Damn it. Can you clone yourself? Spreadsheet guru over here. That's
It's like funny. So you already wake up at what, 5 a.m. to get all of our expert interviewer stuff done? It'd just be like an hour or two earlier for Maureen. Get in there.
Easy, right?
I do. Yeah.
Oh
the
my
balance
gosh.
of that, the balance of that too, like I could see how people are like, oh my gosh, you work a full-time job and then you're up early and you're on the weekends. But I'll just say that this is my favorite stuff to do. And so it's not work for me to get up at like 5 a.m. and do some of this, because it's so passionate for me to email brands and for me to communicate and send scripts over, send, different things. Like that's exciting to me, and I love it. And I get a thrill out of responding to all of our comments. Like I'm always in there. Lorna knows, I'm always screenshotting what we hear and I'm putting it into folders. Like I just love that kind of stuff. So it doesn't feel like work. And I love my full-time job too. So I also think like there's no shame in that game. Like I'm a project manager in organizational development, and so much of what I do translates over as well. And we benefit from those PM skills that I have. So I'm like the combo, as long as it works for you in your life, like it just works for me in my life current state. There might be a time where it doesn't, but for now it does. And that feels really great to be able to maintain both, to your point, until it reaches a place where I feel really comfortable, making a transition one way or the other.
Oh my gosh. So amazing. I'm so happy for you guys. Like you said, there are very few organizations that actually train their managers, and that's a huge problem. Obviously, we've talked to Ashley Hurd about, why management training is important, but in that there's the whole interview process, and hiring managers get a goose egg when it comes to guidance through that process. And it can open up to companies to, I imagine, massive liability for their people going out there and saying incredibly insane stuff, right? And so you are doing a service by teaching in a very relatable, funny, entertaining way what people should not do. And then it inspires people to realize, oh boy, like we could be in trouble if we don't actually pay attention to getting people schooled on this stuff, right?
Right. And it's not always the insane stories that get people in trouble, which is crazy. It could be something as simple as the small talk before the interview starts. You just start. It's like, oh, cool. So where are you from? You're like coming out of the gates hot with a protected characteristic, an illegal question right out of the gates. And that's why I always say that like hiring managers, they're not intentionally going in thinking, I'm going to ask illegal questions. Instead, they just need an ounce of education. Like that's it. It's like give them a little bit so that they can first stay legal, but then move on and graduate past that to actual questions that are going to help them determine if somebody's a good fit or not,
Oh my gosh. Yeah. No, I love it. I went straight to the litigious aspect of it. But you're right. It's like it can also help you have better outcomes for your company if you like hire right and get people who will stay at the organization, right? So like having a plan and a process behind how do you zone in on the right candidate, that's pretty critical too. So yeah, no, I mean, it's funny, thinking through interviews that I've conducted myself, I'm sure I've accidentally waded into like territory that was not so chill. Like just having small talk as a human being, right? Oh, you're a parent. Like, I realize now, I'm like, oh my gosh, before when I wasn't a parent myself, I didn't realize that was like a no-fly zone, right? And there was absolutely no malicious intent whatsoever. It's like, I want to get to know you on a human level, right? Bring your full self to work, all that stuff. And unfortunately, we also have the situation where it's like, we're looking for a culture fit, right? Which I think needs to be abolished in the world out there, because it's really just like a homogenous group that you're going to assemble that way, or someone you want to get a beer with, not necessarily the best person for the job, right? But like, I know that I was looking for commonality. I was looking to connect. And I'm like very much not an asshole, I promise. And so it was never with the intention of doing something wrong, but I didn't know any better, right? So
That's
opening
just
yourself up as a company to this possibility of having someone kind of step in it accidentally, like, ooh, that's not good.
I think that what you just said there is going to resonate with so many people, because everyone who you get to be in an interview versus who you are when you sit next to somebody at a bar in an airport, they have to be different people,
Yes.
And so when you first meet someone, the first thing you're looking for are things to find in common with them. And you're used to making people feel comfortable. So you're like, just talk about something you like,
Oh my gosh.
And
yes.
they're good intentions. This is one of our sayings, actually. It's good intentions, but biased outcomes. And so
Perfect.
Your unconscious biases are going to take over. You're going to hire people that are like you, or like the other people that are on board. And then suddenly you have this flat team of no diversity of thought. And that's not going to help anyone grow. And managers who only hire people like themselves will never be better managers. People only grow when you hire somebody who's different than you. And so, teaching people to identify the gaps in their current team, to hire specifically toward those gaps, is going to help that well-rounded team to be built.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, I love how you framed all of that up. It's so true. Maybe share with us some of the top client transformation stories that you have. Maybe a favorite, if you can pick a favorite. I know it's hard.
Yeah. I have one in mind. When I first started working with some of our Canadian partners that we had, they had initially like I think the numbers were like 27% of the people that they hired within the first 3 months quit.
What?
27%.
Oh my gosh.
When sitting in on their interviews, they were just flying off the cuff, right? It's just like, they just got thrown in. How do I feel about this person? Can they hang? Is that it? I'm like, that's fine. Move on. After a little bit of training, a little bit of shadowing and interviewing, we were able to get them down to 2% for the first 3 months. And then after
that's crazy.
It is crazy. Yeah. It's like, let's just hire for the skills of the job instead. It's like, it seems so simple. But yeah, so that was one of my favorite success stories, just because it was something so tangible like that. Once you get outside that 3-month mark, it is kind of hard, because talent assessment, it turns into talent management.
Good point.
So then after 3, 6, 9 months, they're deciding whether or not they like their manager, not whether or not they're aligned for the job. So that gets a little hairy, but the fact that we could keep people long enough to see if they could do the job was a great improvement.
Dude, a 25% improvement? That's incredible.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That should get some heads turning, I would
Good.
think. Everybody listen up. Your org needs some help, right? Oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm just thinking through, man, I think pretty much every organization of which I've been a part could have benefited from something like that. Yeah, that's for sure. For sure.
We hear that a lot. And so it's just a matter of them letting us in. It's a scary thing for companies, I think, to look behind the curtain of their interviewing. So it does take some bravery first and foremost, which I understand. But if they are brave enough to look behind the curtain, we're here to help them once they do.
Benefits await.
Well,
yeah.
And people are there's like a lot of ego involved in hiring. I think there's certain folks that, right. Certain folks that have a lot of pride in how they do it and their questions. And I mean, I've seen lists, and Lorna has a skit where she literally like blows the dust off of like an interview guide, I think, or like wipes it, It's like there are these like legacy processes that just linger in companies. And it's just really interesting to see the transformation, and to think of the hiring managers that we've worked with. Like she said, a few small tweaks and changes, some knowledge. It doesn't need to be a full overhaul, but small changes and small mindset shifts can be huge, and can just have such huge outcomes, like 25%.
That's so wild. I love that stat. That's a solid stat. I'll say, I feel like
there is just a lack of introspection in business, just frequently across the board and in the companies where I've been. And it's like this desire to grow that's stated as an objective. Like we want to learn, we want to grow, we want to bring people in who have experience, who know what they're doing in this arena, and get them to show us how to, see around corners and do something different. But then all too often what I've observed is that once people come in and actually try to shake it up, they're like, oh, be quiet. Like we actually want more people who are going to be yes men. And so I think this is probably a particularly difficult arena to affect change and get people to wake up, in the sense that, I mean, they're in the driver's seat as the hiring managers and as the company, right? Like that power imbalance is often very, very visible, right? In this process, it's like we hold all the cards. We expect you to do all the interview prep. We're going to come. Oh, we may not even know your name. We forgot about this, and we're showing up 10 minutes late, right? Like some of your videos are so funny, Lorna. It's like you're in the drive-through lane. You're like, oh yeah, like talking to the drive-through attendant while you're on an interview representing your company, right? And it's like. But that's how much different the imbalance of power is when people are organizing these interviews, right? And it's like, it's so, I think companies just completely miss the mark on how critical this is in order for them to grow and actually have better results, right? And man, hopefully, I think that your videos and the way you guys are advertising your services and these as an issue, right, in this really funny way, I think it's probably done a great service to people who are kind of waking up to, oh yeah, maybe we should consider that.
Yeah.
That's the hope.
That is the hope. Yeah. And it's what's crazy is that candidates have known this imbalance for a long time, right?
Yeah.
They know it, they know of it. But what's crazy to me is that hiring managers haven't recognized it really. It's like there is this very unnecessary power dynamics in interviewing. And so Victoria and I created the golden rule of interviewing. And it's a pretty simple rule of thumb for hiring teams. If it would be weird if a candidate did it to you, don't do it to them.
What a concept.
That solves a lot of problems.
Right. Thinking through your drive-through example, imagine a candidate on the video interview and they're in the drive-through. That hiring manager would decline them in 2 seconds, but it's not, it's a double standard. So that rule is all about that double standard. And you asked earlier about like the future of work and what that looks like with expert interviewers. To me, the future of interviewing in an ideal world is that it's a two-way street, it's balanced, and that you are just as interested as a hiring manager in finding out if the candidate thinks the job is a good fit for them as if they are a fit for, your job. It's like it should be literally just as important, because that 3-month attrition we were talking about earlier oftentimes also comes from you convinced a candidate that the job was a good fit for them. They weren't sure, but they took the plunge anyway because you didn't take the time to allow them the time and space to vet the job for themselves. And it's going to hurt you both in the end. So waste of time for everybody.
It totally is. And I always laugh at the parallels between interviewing and looking for a job and dating, because it's like, it really is, it's all there. It's all right there. And that, I imagine like saying, like, I'm evaluating you as much as you're evaluating me, like looking at it from that perspective, A, yes, it's true anyway, but B, it gives that sort of like, I'm just, I'm not so eager, right? I'm not over the top. I'm not like, just dying for you to say yes to me, right? And that I'm telling you, that energy, they like it. So if you just like, come at like, I swear it works. So it's legit.
There's so many parallels with the dating component that I joke about. Because like both sides are going to have first impressions, and I think a lot of hiring managers forget that too.
They do. They do, and especially if this is a candidate who's like high up there and like sought after, you're not going to set yourself up in a good light at all. But yeah, I think this time, this particular market, it's the imbalance of power has shifted so much towards the employer side versus the employee side. Like I think people are understandably like really hot to just get a paycheck, like, and that makes sense. So I think there's still going to be a little bit of that, but to your point, it still makes a difference on outcomes if you can, show up, do the golden rule thing. I think just humans in general should kind of try and abide by that.
Just be human.
Just be human.
Just be human.
Just be human. So, obviously this show talks a good bit about what it's like getting older in corporate, and we had a lot of nice real talk about that. And the reality is that the facts are not great when it comes to hiring and retaining older people. It's also similarly not great
to be a young candidate with little experience right now. And Gen Z is getting just, they're getting hosed, and it breaks my heart. So ageism does go both ways. It's a bias against someone based on the year of their birth, which is so absurd to me, but it is a thing that we all do.
Yeah.
And it's very much entrenched in our society. So thinking about that and how that comes up in the hiring process, like I had an experience years ago where I was on a team where I was asked to be a part of an interview loop, and I was the head of basically this program at this department. And we had a slew of candidates come through. And there was one who was probably 10 to 15 years older than all of us on the team who were around my age. At the time, I was around 30. Very young company, as is very typical in tech. And this guy came through who just like killed it. He was so smart. He was so accomplished. He knew everything about the industry. And we needed someone to guide us because we were all kind of newbies. And so I was like, oh man, this is our guy. This is our guy. And so I advocated very strongly for him to be hired. I was the only one who wanted him to be hired. And do you know who we hired instead? Another one of us, a dude who was about our age, who, one of them was a friend with someone else on the team, and definitely like a bro you go get a beer with, right? And I didn't realize until far later that it was, I think, in part ageism that caused that bias to happen, right? And that culture fit concept, because that word was thrown about as to why he wasn't hired. And he and I developed like a good relationship where he reached out and he was like, why didn't I get it? And I was like, I honestly don't know. And I'm like, I hope he listens to the show now because I do know now.
Right. In hindsight.
Sir,
if you're listening, we've got your answer.
We love you. I'm so sorry. I tried my best.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's I have to send this episode to him. But yeah, it's, I think it can come up in ways that people aren't, it's not like this nefarious plot to ensure that like no older people get hired like all the time. Sometimes it literally is. But how can people sort of navigate this? How can we let companies know? Because it's very clear to me that a lot of companies have no idea that that's illegal. And you poke fun at it so beautifully in so many of your videos where you're like kind of hinting around like, hey, do you know, like, do you ever hear the one you did that just killed me was you were like, do you understand what this noise means? Like AOL, like that is hysterical. That's amazing. But like how, and some companies will literally come out and be like, how old are you? And it's part of the application process. That's not illegal at the federal level. It is at certain states and cities. But tell me a little bit more about like what you can share with people who might be internal at their companies now, hiring candidates, and what do they need to know that they should stay away from when it comes to like questions that can get into that sort of gray area?
Well, that's a really good question. First, there's going to be some teams that don't care at all, and they're going to do it anyway.
Good point.
So these messages are not to them because I get that I'm not going to hear them anyway. But the people who want to be aware and want to avoid it, first thing first is what I always say is that you have to ask only job-related questions. If it's not related to the job, then it doesn't matter. It's a waste of time. Best case, it's a waste of time. Worst case, it's an illegal question. But I think that people are always going to have unconscious biases. That's how we are. That's how humans are. But my advice to those companies who do want to make sure that they're avoiding those things is to sit down with anyone that's going to be working with the person that they end up hiring and establish and define what success actually looks like in the role. In terms of skill sets, in terms of motivators, there's only two things you need to find out about the candidate. Can they do the job, and do they want to do the job? So deciding all of those right answers before you ever meet a candidate helps the process so much, because you're able to set aside your unconscious biases that are going to be there no matter what, and instead take the candidate's answers, their previous actions in difficult related situations, and compare that to your own right answers. And if you're starting with the data first, then you're more likely to make more inclusive hiring decisions.
Damn it, you're making too much sense. Wow. Just mic drop, right? Like,
oh my gosh. The only thing I would add, because I love what you said, as I do think there are people out there, and obviously these folks listen to you, Maureen, so they are so lucky because they get a lot of good nuggets and information from you, which is amazing. But I would say that if you're sitting there going, oh no, that doesn't we don't do that. I'll just say facts over feelings. I'm a big facts over feelings girl. And two stats I've seen recently. One was like a 55-year-old is 3 times less likely to get contacted for an interview than someone younger. So that's like across the board, right? Nationally, that's like a national survey. So just if you're wondering if it's happening, proof right there. It is happening. And then what's really crazy about the time we're in now, and you've spoken to this, I saw you did a post recently about Gen Z, and there is kind of a war on Gen Z, right? And by 2030, they're going to make up like 30% or 40% of the workforce, something like that. It's growing. So you're saying, well, we don't want to hire them because they're entitled and they don't,
Which was us,
so it's like, you don't want to
millennials,
hire the
right?
55 plus. Yeah. You don't want to hire the
Right.
55 plus because they're overqualified. And why would they want this job? Da, 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 da. And then you don't want the young people. So I'm sorry, what is this teeny tiny window you're trying to hire
Exactly.
to? You're
When's the
shrinking
right
your
age?
candidate pool for literally no reason. So I just want to
Yeah.
hold up that mirror in some ways, because I often see people just brush off this
Oh, yeah.
conversation, assuming it's not happening or it's
Right.
happening. And if you shrink your
Oh.
window, you're only hurting yourself.
Right. Yeah. And we have a very clear lack of mentorship for younger talent in the industry, in many industries, right? It's just not a priority for a lot of organizations. And that has a downstream impact as well. So it's concerning to see what's happening out there with regard to the dismissal of young and old talent alike, right? Younger and older, I should say. But we're all getting older every day. So we better figure this out. And as a demographic, we are, the G8 nations, we are getting older really, really quickly. So by 2030, I think it's going to be over 30% of the workforce, the available workforce, will be over age 55. So it's a shift that's upon us, and companies, they haven't recognized, in large part, like 92% of companies don't even look at age as a demographic, and companies just aren't paying attention to what's already in play and making it a place for people who are older and hopefully younger too to work that attracts and retains that talent and provides them with opportunities for growth, and not assumptions of like, oh, well, this person's going to retire or this person doesn't want to work, right? That happens all the time.
So the assumption is something that I was going to talk about, because oftentimes these companies are assuming that the person isn't going to enjoy a certain aspect of this job based on their age. And that's actually one of the most common mistakes that hiring managers make, is that they know how to hire. Well, they think they know how to hire for skill set, and they don't even touch motivators. They don't know how to. They're asking questions like, what are your top 3 motivators? What gets you out of bed in the morning? And that's not going to cut it. Motivators should be half of an interview. And so if you're not unlocking what truly motivates a person, then you're not going to be able to recognize that somebody would love to be in this kind of environment, would love to have these kinds of skills, have enjoyed that specific industry. And if you don't unlock that, you're not going to know it, So
God, that's so true. I can't think of any interview I've ever been a part of where the motivating factors for me has come close to 50% of the interview.
Wow.
I'm like, that
Yeah.
just, no.
Yeah, that's common.
Wow. Yeah.
Yeah.
Instead, they're just operating on gut checks and assumptions, right?
Right.
And wow, yeah, because you don't know what you don't know, and people don't know to do better on this,
Yeah.
I guess.
Yep.
Until you're on the opposite side, feeling it.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's, man, I'm so glad you guys are out there doing this work, because
Thanks.
we all need you. But I guess from your work in corporate, if you can share a little bit about what you've seen with regards to ageism in the hiring process and like how it surfaced. You don't have to name names. We're not here to call anyone out, but curious how, if and how that has come up for you, if you noticed it, or if it's something that maybe you're only more recently aware of. Because like I'll say, I didn't really figure it out until I was older, and I was like, oh, someone called me a dino at 37. Oh, ageism is a thing. Oh boy, like it happens.
Yeah,
way often.
I've seen it really recently in almost like, I don't want to say a microaggression way, but I think in certain ways we overlook the person with little experience. So I've seen it's like, instead of going to the newer, less experienced candidate or person and asking them something at work, right? You are defaulting to the person who's been in the job longer or who has that experience, but you could get really good perspective from that other person. So it's almost like, it's like that biased way of just like, who are you going to for advice, for conversations? And then additionally, on the flip side, I worked with someone who was definitely ended up retiring, shortly after transferring to our team. And I saw her be very underutilized. And I think that happens so often on both ends, that they're just, they have all this institutional knowledge and they're almost forgotten about on both ends. So it's really interesting. And I think when you think about, we talked about shrinking your candidate pool, I also think if you're not leveraging the people on both sides of the spectrum at your workforce, you're just, again, shrinking your knowledge, shrinking your perspective, and you're really limiting your ability to grow because you're not incorporating those folks. And I've seen that regularly throughout my career, for sure.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
It does. And I had a similar example when we're working with hiring teams to help identify who they need to hire. Part of that is reflection of their current team. And it's interesting when they think we need, like a senior person that knows everything, senior person that knows everything, senior person that knows everything. And it's like, time out. Wouldn't it help if we had somebody at the bottom that has a fresh perspective, that is looking at processes from a different way, or have worked in a slightly different industry or a different related company or whatever it might be. So it's like learning how to help companies open their eyes to their current talent and helping them to identify those gaps, because it's not always something that they're aware of. And they just hire what they're comfortable with.
It's so true. And it's interesting, Textio does a lot of research on, hiring managers and how they assess candidates, as well as, job descriptions and the language that's used, and what happens in employee appreciation and review cycles. And it's funny, like the word responsible comes up. I think it's like 40% more times for people who are over 40 than under 40. And like potential, I can't remember the exact stat for this, but potential or like, ambitious comes up for younger people, but not older. So we do just have these gut assumptions that we make all the time, whether we know it or not. And again, like not necessarily malicious. It's just it's a human thing to do, unfortunately, but we got to learn not to.
Right. We got to learn not to, whether it's age or women versus men, like how they give feedback to candidates.
Oh my God.
For men. Yeah. Men versus women. So listening to feedback from interviews is part of the fun part of ours too. And hearing how sometimes they'll describe a woman candidate versus a male candidate. I'm like, time out.
Oh boy.
Time out. Let's start over, So yeah, there's that too. But I mean, that's why we're here. We're here to help people recognize when those sorts of things come out of their mouth, So
man, well, I love what you guys do so much, and I can't wait to see even more coming from you. My audience is going to want to go follow you. They're going to want to hear what you have to offer. So where can they do all that?
Yes, you can follow us at Expert Interviewers on TikTok and Instagram. And then we post on LinkedIn through Lorna's personal account. So Lorna Erickson on LinkedIn. Then, of course, if you want to inquire about, services, if you heard something that you're like, I could use some help with that, you can for sure reach out to us on our website, just expertinterviewers.com. So really easy. And by the way, we are excited about everything you're doing and what you have coming up, and just the message that you get out. It's so important and it's so amazing. So it kind of feeling mutual. When you were saying all those things about us, I was like, wait, we feel that way about her.
Huge fans. So we're very, very happy to have been here.
One last thing. I think you guys have a newer offering that you're putting out there in the works, and I'd love it if you could just share a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we understand that a lot of companies might have a tough time jumping into a complete training and overhauling their entire interviewing process, because it can be scary. But if you want some of that baby step, then we offer 1-hour quick sessions for leadership teams. They could be hiring managers themselves or the people that support hiring managers. So HR teams, TA teams, recruiters. So we can offer a quick 1-hour session just to help give a couple nuggets of advice that could just change the way that they or you are thinking about interviewing. And then, as always, we always have our online module courses that if someone's like, I need a training right now, great. Just go to our website at expertinterviewers.com and you'll see our training that you could start right now if you wanted to on demand.
I love it. You guys. Thanks so much.